Hello, this is Gavin Phillips with LayerCake. In this movie tutorial, we'll be focusing on the lighting. Now, once again, for your convenience, we have a number of layer comps already made up for you. And with the layer comps, of course, it's so easy to click through and find a set that's close to what you like, and then you can make changes to it if you want to. There's another way to click through it. You can just use the arrow keys here. And as I mentioned in the first movie tutorial, you can make any changes to these layer comps, of course, in the layers here. And then you could update it by clicking on the button here, the update button, which would update this particular layer comp. Or you could simply click on create new layer comp and create a completely new one, which will show up at the bottom here. Now I'm going to turn off the light brush samples here, this group, so we can get a better view of what we're doing. There's another reason for turning off the light brush layers, and I mentioned this in the first movie. It's much easier to get to the other layers, for instance these light beams, when the light brush layers are turned off. Now if you want to make changes to, say, this light ray here, there are a couple of ways to get to this quickly. One way is to right click on it, and we did that in the first movie tutorial. Another way is to click on auto select. Make certain that you have layer selected in this drop down here. Now when I click on it, look what happens. It opens up the group that it's in and identifies that layer for me. Now of course I can change the opacity of the light ray. I can use free transform, Control or Command T if I wanted to change the direction of it, move it over here a little bit, press enter. You could also soften the light if it's a little bit too strong. Go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and soften the light a little bit. Cancel out of that. Now you could even change the color of the lights. Control or Command U will bring up the hue saturation dialog box. If I click on colorize and I drop the lightness back a bit and max out close to maxing out the saturation here, you'll see on the light there that I can go to any color I want here. So you've got a lot of different ways to go. You can even change the color of the lights if you want to. I'm going to cancel out of that. I can also select the barn door light here as well and move it wherever I want to. I'm going to put it back there. And if this was something that you wanted to save as a new layer comp, click on new layer comp, just call it new dancer. OK, and that's going to pop down at the bottom here. Let's minimize her and close out the layer comps. Now you also receive all of the lights layered like this and organized for you, color-coded in the different layers and the different groups. So we can see here this one, you can turn it on and off. You could open up the group, of course, and see exactly what's inside there. As a default, the light rays are turned off. It makes it much easier to work with them when you're dragging and dropping the groups of lights from one set to another. Let's see how we'd make up a set using the floors and walls and using the lights. So I'm starting with the floors and walls. I've got a floor that I picked out here. Let's scroll up through the walls. Picked out this one. I'm going to add some graffiti here. Turn on the graffiti, and of course we've got a number of different options for the graffiti. Now if we move up the layers, we've got this fire plug here under accents that you can also turn on and off. You've got some pigeons here. You can add or remove. I'm going to turn on this utility pole and its shadow. Now we're going to put our model in. She's already been cut out with the panel, and that's covered in the first movie tutorial. We also have several movie tutorials showing you how to cut anybody out of anything. Drag her in. We can move her around, of course. You can put her wherever you want to. I'm going to put her back by the pole. And we've got a shadow here that we made with the panel, and that's covered in the first movie tutorial. There are also other movies that you'll be receiving about how to make shadows with the panel. Now we're going to drag and drop our lights in. Before you do that, you want to make sure that your groups are closed here, so when we drag and drop in the groups of lights, they don't accidentally go into these other groups. So I'm going to select a layer below her, below our model here, so that we can drag and drop the lights in behind the model. So I'm going to bring up one of the groups of lights here. I'm going to select the monolight, and if you hold down Control or Command, you can select two or more groups at once. I'm going to drag and drop them into our set. Now the lights, as you can see, they're off the edge of the canvas, but that's no problem. They're both selected as we drag and drop them in. The thing to remember is I use this auto select with group selected. So now when I grab on one of the edges of the lights, I can move them around. So I can click off of them. Now I can click this one, just get them roughly into the position that I want, and then we're going to use the free transform tool to get them exactly how we want them. The first thing I'm going to do is make certain that I've selected both of these groups here. Control or Command T to bring up the free transform tool, right click inside and go to flip horizontal. Move those over a bit. Hit enter or double click to apply. I'm going to reposition them now. Move this one to the back. I'm going to use the free transform tool again to make this one a little bit bigger and reposition it here. Hit enter and then grab the other one, bring that across. I'm going to use the free transform again. If you press Control or Command 0, that will bring these grab handles. They're a little bit more accessible. Get that where I want it, hit enter. Now I want to change the angle of this. I'm going to change it to layer. Now when I click on it, it's going to pop it right up there, the softbox. Control Command T once again. Want to change the angle of that, reposition it. Now we'll turn the light rays on this one and the other one here. Now, as I mentioned before, if the light ray is a little bit too strong, sometimes it's a bit too sharp, you can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and knock it back a bit. So you've got another way to soften it. And finally, you use the Studio Magic panel to put on a paint with light layer, and that's covered in the first movie tutorial. You simply paint on the layer mask with a nice soft brush to bring in the light wherever you want it. You could drop the opacity back here a little bit maybe and paint some in on the outside. And of course you can work with the opacity of the light brush layer as well. Let's take a look at another lighting setup. So we can see how this set was made up. She was cut out using the Studio Magic panel and a shadow was put on there using the panel. Working with the panel is covered in the first movie tutorial, and you'll also be receiving several movie tutorials that are specific to working with the Studio Magic panel. And then you have your light set here. I did exactly the same thing that I did in the previous set. You grab your group, drag and drop it, make sure it's behind your subject here. Then of course you can open it up, go in here, make any changes to the light ray that you want to. So if we scroll down through the layers here, we can see what else we're using in this set. We've got the floor spot here that's turned on. You can turn that on and off, of course. We're not using any of the accents here. And here I copied across one of your included photo scenes. That's all covered in the first movie tutorial. And then if we turn these off and turn off the backdrop stands, we can see that we're starting with our floors and walls, and that's all explained in the first movie tutorial. I'll just turn those back on. And let's take a look at this sports set here. And this was made exactly the same way. We've got our floor and wall, and we've got our graffiti here that you can turn on and off. Copy it across one of your photo scenes, and then of course dragged and dropped in the lighting here. Let's take a few seconds and look at a few more sets with lights. By combining the different lights with different set combinations, you've got so many creative ways to go. You can use one of ours that's already created for you, or you can create your own and save it as a new layer comp. When you combine all of these different elements that are at your disposal, the lighting, the floors and walls, the photo scenes, there are so many different sets that you can create. And that wraps it up for this tutorial. Thank you for watching.